The sun hung low over the dusty outskirts of Willow Creek, painting the cracked asphalt in shades of orange and shadow. It was the kind of evening where the air smelled of dry earth and distant rain that never came, and the only sounds were the faint hum of cicadas and the occasional rumble of a truck on the highway. But tonight, that peace shattered like glass under a boot heel. A little girl, no more than 7, stumbled out from the smouldering ruins of what had once been a modest home. Her dress was smudged with soot, her small hands clutching a ragged teddy bear as tears carved clean paths down her dirt-streaked face. "They burned our home!" she wailed into the empty street, her voice raw and piercing, echoing off the empty lots like a siren's call. She collapsed to her knees, the ground biting into her skin as flames still licked at the skeletal remains of the roof behind her. No one came running, no neighbors, no sirens. Just the girl, alone, her cries swallowed by the indifferent dusk. From the horizon, a low growl built, growing into a thunderous roar that vibrated through the earth. Headlights pierced the gloom like searchlights, a convoy of motorcycles slicing through the twilight. At the lead was Ethan Harlan, a weathered man in his late 40s, his leather jacket scarred from years of road and regret. His face, lined with the ghosts of battles fought and promises broken, tightened as he spotted the child. The pack behind him, 51 strong, the Iron Vow MC, slowed in unison, engines purring like predators sensing prey. Ethan killed his bike first, boots hitting the dirt with a heavy thud. He knelt before the girl, his calloused hand gentle on her shoulder. "Hey, kiddo," he murmured, voice gravelly but kind. "You're safe now. Tell me what happened." The girl's eyes, wide with terror, locked onto his. "Men. They came with papers. Said we had to leave. Mama fought them and then... fire." Her words tumbled out in sobs, painting a picture of eviction gone wrong, corrupt officials turning a blind eye to a family's desperation, a spark from a careless torch igniting everything. Ethan's jaw clenched, memories flooding back, his own childhood home lost to flames in a Milltown fire. The promise he'd made to his dying father to protect the vulnerable, a vow buried under layers of outlaw life and lost comrades. He scooped her up, her small frame light against his chest, and carried her to his bike. The crew dismounted, a wall of leather and steel forming around the wreckage. "Call it in!" Ethan barked to his second, a burly veteran named Marcus. "And get eyes on those officials." As the girl, Lily, she whispered her name, clung to him, something stirred in Ethan's chest, a forgotten ember reigniting. This wasn't just a stop on the road. It was a call to honor, to rebuild what greed had torn down. By dawn, he'd rally the club not for vengeance, but for restitution, a weekend's labor to raise walls stronger than before. Ethan rode through the night with Lily pressed against his back, her teddy bear tucked into his saddlebag. The wind whipped at his graying beard, carrying the faint scent of smoke that clung to her hair. Willow Creek wasn't much, a forgotten dot on the map, squeezed between sprawling developments that chewed up family farms like termites. But tonight, it felt like ground zero for something bigger, a spark that could either consume or forge. They pulled into the Iron Vow's outpost on the edge of town, a weathered garage lit by flickering neon. The crew gathered around a scarred oak table, maps and blueprints unrolled like battle plans. Marcus, with his tattooed arms crossed, leaned in. "Heard whispers, boss. Local councilman Victor Hale, pushing folks out for some resort deal. Papers were fake as a $3 bill. That fire? No accident." Ethan nodded, his eyes distant. 20 years ago he'd been like Lily, 8 years old, watching his world burn when the mill shut down and left his family homeless. His father, a quiet union man, had pulled him aside amid the ashes. "Son, when the world's against the little guy, you stand for him. Promise me you'll keep that fire in your gut for the right reasons." Ethan had joined the Marines after, then the club, chasing adrenaline to drown the guilt of promises unkept. But here, holding Lily's trembling hand, as a club medic checked her for signs of harm, minor scrapes, echoes of chaos, he felt the weight settle. "We rebuild," he said, voice steady as the rumble of a V-twin. "Not for show, for her, for all of 'em like her." The room erupted in murmurs of agreement, fists thumping the table. These weren't just riders. They were brothers forged in foxholes and back-alley brawls, a chosen family bound by ink and oath. Sarah, Lily's mother, arrived soon after, guided by a patrol car that the club had flagged down. She was a fragile woman in her 30s, eyes hollow from exhaustion, but fierce as she hugged her daughter. "Thank you," she whispered to Ethan. "I thought we were done for." As the first light of dawn crept over the hills, the convoy reformed. Trucks hauled lumber and tools from the club's network, donations from allied chapters, favors called in from old war buddies turned contractors. Ethan mounted his bike, Lily waving from Sarah's arms on the porch of a temporary safe house. The girl smiled for the first time, a tiny beacon amid the ruins. This ride wasn't about the road. It was about roots, about turning destruction into defiance. And as the engines roared to life, Ethan knew, one weekend, 51 souls, and a promise kept could mend more than walls. The site buzzed by mid-morning, hammers ringing like war drums under a relentless sun. Dust swirled around steel-toed boots, the air thick with the tang of sawdust and fresh paint. Ethan worked shirtless, sweat tracing the faded tattoos across his back, an eagle clutching a broken chain, symbol of freedoms hard won. He hammered the first foundation stake himself, driving it deep into the earth as if anchoring his own resolve. Lily toddled over, clutching a juice box one of the old ladies had given her. "Will it be pretty?" she asked, peering up at him. "Prettier than before," Ethan replied, ruffling her hair, "with a room just for you." Across the lot, Marcus coordinated with a few locals who'd trickled in, neighbors shamed into silence by fear, now stirred by the spectacle. "Ain't seen nothing like this since the war," one grizzled farmer muttered, handing over a cooler of sandwiches. Word spread like wildfire. By noon, volunteers swelled the ranks, turning the rebuild into a quiet revolution. But shadows lingered. Ethan caught sight of a sleek black SUV idling at the road's edge, tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. Hale's men, no doubt, sniffing for weakness. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow, and met their gaze through the glare. This wasn't a fight for blood. It was for the soul of a place, for the promise that decency still roared louder than corruption. As the day waned, the frame rose, a skeleton of hope against the sky. Ethan stepped back, chest heaving, the ache in his muscles a welcome burn. Lily ran to him, wrapping her arms around his leg. "You're my hero," she said simply. He knelt, voice thick. "Nah, kid. Heroes are the ones who keep going. We're just getting started." The sun dipped, casting long shadows over the emerging home, and Ethan felt the old promise settle into place, not a burden, but a banner. 51 riders, one little girl's cry, and the weekend stretched ahead like an open road. Redemption wasn't in the roar, it was in the rebuild. Saturday morning broke over Willow Creek with a vengeance, the sky a bruised canvas of grey clouds that promised rain but delivered only stifling heat. The rebuild site hummed with purpose, the air alive with the sharp crack of nail guns, and the low murmur of voices weaving through the scent of pine resin and diesel fumes. Ethan Harlan wiped the grit from his eyes, his hands raw from hauling beams since dawn. The skeleton of the new house stood taller now, walls framing up like defiant sentinels against the charred scar of the old foundation. Lily darted between the workers' legs, her laughter a rare melody cutting through the labor's rhythm, a stuffed bear now patched and clean swinging from her fist. Marcus sidled up to Ethan, toolbox in hand, his broad frame casting a shadow over the half-laid sub-floor. "Crew's solid, boss. Got 20 more hands from the next town over. old-timers with skills from the mill days, but that SUV spotted it again last night, circling like a vulture. His voice dropped, eyes scanning the perimeter where chain-link fences rattled in the breeze. Ethan nodded, the weight of it settling like dust on his shoulders. Victor Hale wasn't the type to fade into the woodwork. Whispers from the club's network painted him as a silver-tongued developer with council pockets lined deeper than a riverbed. Fake eviction notices, accidental blaze. It reeked of the same rot that had eaten Ethan's hometown alive 2 decades back. He paused, hammer mid-swing, the memory crashing in unbidden. The mill fire, not arson but neglect, owners cutting corners while families like his scraped by. His father, coughing ash from ruined lungs, had gripped his boy's hand in the hospital ward, the beep of machines, a grim metronome. Ethan, promise me, don't let 'em grind you down, stand for the ones who can't. Those words had propelled him into the core, then the club, a brotherhood where oaths were etched in skin and steel. But life had a way of burying vows under miles of blacktop, until a child's cry dragged them kicking and screaming back to the surface. Sarah approached then, balancing a tray of coffee mugs steaming in the humid air. Her face, still pale from the ordeal, softened as she handed one to Ethan. "She's happier than I've seen in months," she said, glancing at Lily, who was helping an older rider stack bricks, her tiny hands smudged with mortar. You're giving us more than a house. It's like breathing again." Ethan took the mug, the warmth seeping through the ceramic like a tentative trust. Sarah was tough, waitressing double shifts to keep the roof over their heads before it literally caved, but the fire had cracked something deep. "We keep promises around here," he replied, his gaze steady. "Yours is safe with us." The morning stretched into a frenzy of activity. Engines growled as supply trucks rumbled in, unloading sheets of drywall and bundles of wiring that snaked across the lot like veins. Ethan climbed the ladder to the roof framing, the wood creaking under his weight, offering a vantage over the sprawl. From up here, Willow Creek looked smaller, hemmed in by encroaching billboards hawking luxury escapes, Hale's vision, no doubt, turning farmland into concrete playgrounds for the rich. A flicker of movement caught his eye. The black SUV again, parked discreetly behind a cluster of oaks, a figure in a crisp suit stepping out to make a call. Ethan's grip tightened on the rafter. This wasn't just about one family. It was a thread in a larger web, pulling at the club's code to protect the overlooked. Down below, the crew moved like a well-oiled machine. Noah, a wiry vet with a prosthetic leg from an IED that still haunted his dreams, directed the plumbers, his laughter booming as he joked about bomb-proof pipes. Beside him, Grace, one of the few women in the core ranks, a former nurse who'd patched up more club wounds than she could count, tended to a sprained ankle on a young volunteer. Their bonds weren't born of blood, but forged in shared scars. Late-night rides to pull a brother from the brink, fundraisers for fallen comrades' kids. Ethan watched them, a quiet pride swelling. 51 strong, but today it felt like an army, each swing of a tool a rebuke to the suits who thought power came from paper and payoffs. Lunch brought a brief respite. The group sprawled on tarps with coolers of sandwiches and iced tea sweating in the heat. Lily perched on Ethan's knee, munching an apple, her questions tumbling out like pebbles. "Why do you have all those marks on your arms?" she asked, tracing a faded Marine insignia with a sticky finger. Ethan chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. "Stories, kid. Each one's a reminder to keep going." She nodded solemnly, as if understanding the unspoken layers. The losses, the redemptions, the promises that bound them all. But the idyll shattered mid-afternoon. A squad car rolled up, lights flashing silently, 2 deputies stepping out with badges glinting like false halos. The senior one, a paunchy man named Harlan, no relation, thank God, eyed the sight with thinly veiled disdain. "Heard about this little operation?" he drawled, clipboard in hand. "No permits on file. Council's got regulations." Murmurs rippled through the crew, tools pausing. Ethan descended the ladder slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans, positioning himself between the law and the child, now peeking from behind Sarah's skirt. "Permits," Ethan echoed, voice level but edged with gravel. "For fixing what's broken. That fire wasn't natural, Deputy. We both know it." The man's face twitched, a flicker of unease betraying the script. Hale's influence, no doubt, pressure from above to scatter the do-gooders. Marcus flanked Ethan, the wall of riders closing ranks subtly, engines idling on parked bikes like a warning growl. The deputy shifted, glancing at the SUV now pulling away in the distance. "Just doing my job," he muttered, but his retreat was swift. Tires kicking up dust as he left without a ticket. The incident hung like smoke, fueling the afternoon push. By dusk, the exterior walls stood proud, windows framed against the fading light, a porch taking shape where Lily could watch sunsets in safety. Ethan leaned against a post, muscles screaming, as the crew lit a bonfire in a pit. Not for destruction, but warmth. Stories shared under stars, pricking the velvet sky. Sarah joined them, Lily asleep in her lap, and raised a toast with a water bottle. "To new beginnings," she said, eyes meeting Ethan's across the flames. He nodded, the fire's glow dancing on his face, illuminating lines etched by years of chasing horizons. The promise to his father echoed louder now, intertwined with Lily's cry, Sarah's gratitude, the club's unyielding loyalty. But Hale's shadow loomed, a storm brewing beyond the horizon. Tomorrow they'd wire the heart of the home, but Ethan knew the real work was fortifying against the greed that sought to tear it down. As embers popped into the night, he felt the road ahead fork toward justice or the abyss of broken oaths. The weekend was young, and so was the fight. Sunday dawned with a deceptive calm, the clouds from yesterday parting to reveal a sky stretched taut like a drumhead over Willow Creek. The rebuild site stirred early, the air crisp with the promise of cooler winds carrying hints of pine from the distant hills. Ethan Harlan rose before the light fully broke, his bones protesting the previous day's toll, but his resolve as unyielding as the steel beams now bracing the house's frame. He sipped black coffee from a dented thermos, watching the crew trickle in. 51 riders and growing, their Harleys lined up like faithful steeds along the roadside, chrome glinting in the first rays. The house was taking shape, a sturdy two-story affair with wide eaves to shield against summer storms. Inside, the crew had roughed in the plumbing and electrical, Noah barking orders with a grin that belied his limp, his prosthetic clicking softly against the plywood subfloor. "Run that line straight, or we'll have sparks flying like fireworks," he called to a pair of young prospects, their faces smeared with grime, but eyes alight with purpose. Grace moved among them, her kit bag slung over one shoulder, checking pulses and bandaging blisters with the efficiency of someone who'd seen real wounds in field tents overseas. She'd joined the Iron Vow after losing her brother to a senseless border skirmish, trading scrubs for leathers, finding in the club the family her blood one had forsaken. Ethan stepped into the half-finished kitchen, where sunlight slanted through unfilled window gaps. Dust motes dancing like fireflies in reverse. Sarah was there, measuring counterspace with a tape from the club's supplies, her movements tentative but determined. Lily trailed her, stacking paint cans like building blocks, her giggles echoing off the bare studs. "Mommy, can we have blue walls, like the sky when it's happy?" The child's voice cut through the hammer's rhythm, a reminder of why they pressed on. Sarah glanced up at Ethan, a small smile breaking through her weariness. "She's dreaming big now, thanks to you all." He nodded, leaning against a joist, the wood cool under his palm. "Dreams need foundations. We're laying 'em solid." But even as he spoke, a knot twisted in his gut. Last night's bonfire talk had unearthed more dirt on Hale, anonymous tips from a clerk in the council office forwarded through the club's encrypted channels. The developer wasn't just pushing evictions, he was burying families under liens and inspections to clear land for a gated enclave. Profits funneled to offshore accounts while locals scraped by. It mirrored the mill's collapse all too closely, the way suits had swooped in post-fire, buying up ruins for pennies. Ethan's father had died fighting that tide, his last breath a rasp of unfinished business. Keep the promise, son, for the ones left standing. The morning surged forward, saws whining as they trimmed rafters, the scent of fresh-cut lumber mingling with the earthy bite of mortar mixing in wheelbarrows. Marcus oversaw the roofing crew, his booming laugh countering the strain as they hoisted trusses into place. "Up she goes, boys, like raising a flag on Iwo Jima." The metaphor landed heavy. Half the club were vets, their scars hidden under ink, but surfacing in quiet moments. One rider, a quiet giant named Tyler, paused to etch a small cross into a beam before nailing it home, a silent prayer for his own lost home, shattered by a flood the insurance ignored. By midday, the roof sheathing was on, a patchwork of plywood sealing the structure against the elements. Lunch unfolded under a makeshift canopy, the group sharing stories amid plates of grilled burgers and coleslaw from a local diner's donation. Lily sat cross-legged on the grass, regaling Grace with tales of her teddy bear's adventures, the nurse listening with feigned wide-eyed wonder. Ethan watched from the edge, his mind drifting to the black SUV's latest sighting, pulled over by a state trooper this time, but the driver flashing credentials that bought him a wave-through. Hale was testing waters, probing for cracks in the operation. Afternoon brought the storm he'd half expected, not rain, but trouble on wheels. A fleet of unmarked vans rumbled up, disgorging a dozen men in hard hats and vests, stamped with a generic Development Authority logo. Hale's enforcers, no doubt, armed with clipboards and stop-work orders. The lead, a slick-haired type with a clipboard clutched like a shield, strode forward, voice amplified by false authority. "This site's in violation. No approved plans, no environmental clearance. Shut it down or face fines." The crew froze, tools idling, a ripple of tension coiling like a spring. Ethan emerged from the interior, wiping sawdust from his arms, his presence alone enough to draw eyes. Lily peeked from behind Sarah's legs, her joy dimming to wide-eyed caution. "On whose say-so?" Ethan asked, stepping close enough to read the man's name tag. Fictitious, probably. The bureaucrat faltered, glancing at his entourage, who shifted uneasily under the rider's stares. "Council directive," he blustered, thrusting a paper forward. "Victor Hale's oversight. This land's slated for progress." Ethan scanned the document, its legalese a smokescreen for greed. Memories flashed, his father's union meetings drowned out by corporate lawyers in cheap suits. "Progress that burns homes? Nah, we're building for people, not pockets." Marcus and Noah flanked him, the wall of leather unyielding, while Grace herded volunteers back to work, her voice calm but firm. "Keep at it, folks. This is just noise." The standoff stretched, the air thick with unspoken threats, the van's engines idling like growls, the riders' bikes a silent phalanx nearby. Hale's man sweated under the scrutiny, his bluff cracking as a news van crested the hill, drawn by whispers of the biker benevolence. Cameras rolled, capturing the scene. Hard men with hammers, not holsters, standing for a widow and her child. The bureaucrat crumpled the order slightly, muttering about further review before signaling retreat. The vans peeled out, leaving a wake of dust that settled like defeat. As the sun arced lower, the crew redoubled, wiring lights that flickered to life in test runs, casting warm glows through the framing. Ethan knelt by Lily, handing her a small tool belt cinched with rope. "Help me tighten this bolt?" She beamed, her tiny hands mimicking his, the act a bridge across generations of guarded hearts. Dusk painted the half-home in golden hues, the porch rails now sketched in, a swing chain dangling like an invitation to peace. Around the bonfire that night, stories flowed freer. Tyler's flood survival, Grace's battlefield triage, Sarah's quiet admission of fearing she'd lose everything. Ethan stared into the flames, the heat mirroring the fire in his veins. Hale's retreat was temporary. Tomorrow they'd finish the interior, but the real battle loomed in exposing the rot. The promise pulsed stronger, binding them not in vengeance, but in the quiet power of standing firm. 51 souls, one rising roof, and the weekend's heart beating toward dawn. Monday crept in like a thief, the first hints of light filtering through the canopy of oaks that bordered the rebuild site in Willow Creek. The air held a chill now, the heat of the weekend yielding to a crisp edge that carried the faint, clean scent of dew-kissed grass. Ethan Harlan stood at the edge of the lot, his breath visible in the dimness, staring at the house that had risen from ashes like a phoenix forged in sweat and steel. The structure loomed solid, its roof sealed tight, walls sheathed in siding that caught the paling stars. Inside, the crew would finish today, cabinets hung, floors laid, a family reborn in the span of days. But Ethan's gut twisted with more than fatigue. Hale's shadow had thickened overnight, whispers from the club scouts painting a picture of escalating pressure. Calls to local businesses, veiled threats to volunteers. He rubbed the stubble on his jaw, the scrape rough under his fingers, memories of his father's deathbed flickering like faulty neon. The old man, frail against starched sheets in a Milltown clinic, had squeezed his hand with surprising force. "Ethan, the world's full of wolves in sheep's clothing. Promise me you'll fight smart, for the home, not the hate." That vow had carried him through desert sands and desert roads, binding him to the iron vow like chains of honor. Now, with Lily's laughter echoing from the temporary tent where Sarah brewed coffee, it felt alive again, a compass in the fog of corruption. The crew assembled as the sun breached the horizon, engines coughing to life in a symphony of low rumbles. 51 riders, plus the locals who'd stayed, farmers with calloused hands, a schoolteacher with blueprints from her architect husband, formed a human tide. Marcus clapped Ethan on the back, his grip firm as an anchor. "Roof's watertight, boss. Today's the soul, paint, fixtures, the touches that make it a haven." Noah limped over, prosthetic whispering against the gravel, a thermos of sludge-like brew in hand. Heard Hale's lawyering up, filed some injunction BS with the county, thinks paper tigers scare us. Ethan met his gaze, the weight shared silently. These men weren't strangers. They were the patchwork of his chosen family. Noah from boot camp brawls, Marcus from a roadside rescue that saved Ethan's life after a crash that nearly ended it. Inside the house, the air hummed with activity, the sharp tang of paint mingling with the warm yeast of fresh-baked rolls from Grace's overnight batch. She moved like a shadow, her nurse's instincts guiding her as she helped Sarah install light fixtures, the bulbs casting soft pools of light that chased away the ghosts of smoke. Lily scampered between rooms, her small feet pattering on the subfloor, clutching a paintbrush too big for her hands. "Mr. Ethan, look, I'm making the door blue, like the ocean you ride to." He knelt, dipping the brush in a can of trim paint, guiding her strokes with a steady hand. The simple act grounded him, a thread connecting his scarred past to this fragile future. Sarah watched from the doorway, her eyes glistening, the hollows under them fading with each nailed board. "I never thought. After the fire, I thought we'd be scattered like ash. You gave us roots again." The morning blurred into a rhythm of progress. Cabinets slotted into place with satisfying clicks, countertops gleaming under protective sheets, the kitchen island becoming a heartwood centerpiece donated by a lumberyard ally. Tyler, the quiet giant, wired the outlets with precision born of necessity. His own home lost to floodwaters that lapped at doorsteps while insurers dragged feet. No more dark corners, he muttered to himself, testing a switch that bathed the space in steady glow. Outside, volunteers sealed the porch. The swing now hung and swaying gently, chains tinkling like wind chimes in the breeze. The site thrummed, a living entity defying the greed that had sparked the blaze. But midday brought the storm's full fury. A convoy of polished sedans snaked up the drive, Hale himself at the helm, a man in his 50s. Silver hair slicked back, suit crisp as a blade despite the dust. He stepped out flanked by deputies and a pair of sharp-suited attorneys, clipboards and badges flashing like accusations. The crew paused, hammers silent, a wall of wary eyes turning toward the intrusion. Lily froze mid-step, paint smudged on her cheek, instinctively seeking Ethan's side. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, his voice a low rumble carrying across the lot. "Morning, councilman, come to help finish?" Hale's smile was thin, predatory, his eyes scanning the progress with barely concealed avarice. "Admirable effort, Mr. Harlan. But this is private property, my development zone. That fire was tragic, a necessary clearing for progress. I've got the paperwork, eminent domain, backed by the council's vote." He thrust a folder forward, pages rustling like dry leaves. Murmurs rippled through the riders. Marcus's fists clenched, Noah's jaw set like granite. Ethan took the documents, flipping through legalese that twisted laws into nooses, falsified assessments, rushed approvals smelling of backroom deals. "Progress?" Ethan echoed, handing the folder back untouched. "You mean pushing families into the dirt for condos the locals can't afford? That clearing left a child crying in the street." Hale's facade cracked, a vein pulsing at his temple, the deputies shifting uncomfortably as cameras from the earlier news van circled back, lenses hungry for drama. Grace stepped forward, her voice steady as a surgeon's scalpel. "We've got permits from the county engineer, pro bono, all above board, and witnesses to that accidental fire. Care to explain the accelerant traces?" The air thickened, tension coiling like smoke from a hidden ember. Hale's eyes darted to the house, the swing's gentle motion mocking his empire. "You're outlaws playing hero. This ends now. Tear down start at dawn unless you pack up." But his bluster faltered under the collective stare. 51 riders, unyielding as the foundation they'd poured, their loyalty a force no suit could buy. Ethan straightened, his presence towering without a raised voice. "We're done running from men like you. This home stands, and if your progress touches it, you'll answer to more than paper." Hale hesitated, the weight of exposure pressing in. The news crew capturing every word, locals murmuring about leaked emails from the clerk's office, the Iron Vows network already buzzing with allies in high places. He signaled retreat, sedans crunching gravel in hasty departure, leaving a vacuum filled by the crew's renewed vigor. The afternoon surged. Paint rollers whispering across walls in soft blues and warms, fixtures gleaming. The front door hung with a brass knocker shaped like an eagle, symbol of the club's unbowed spirit. As evening fell, the house complete, they gathered on the porch. Lily swinging with glee, her mother beaming beside her. Ethan leaned against a rail, the wood smooth under his palm, the promise fulfilled in the laughter echoing into twilight. But Hale's threat lingered, a horizon storm. Redemption wasn't in the build alone, it was in the stand that followed, binding family chosen against the tide of corruption. The weekend had forged more than walls. It had reignited a fire of justice, burning bright into the unknown road ahead. If you're feeling the heart in this story, smash that like button. It helps these tales of quiet courage reach more ears. The twilight deepened over Willow Creek, the newly built home standing as a beacon against the encroaching dusk, its fresh paint catching the last glimmers of sun like a promise etched in light. Ethan Harlan lingered on the porch, the swing's chains creaking softly under Lily's weight as she swayed with a contented sigh, her small feet kicking idly. The air carried the clean sharpness of cut grass and drying paint, a far cry from the acrid smoke that had haunted this ground just days ago. Inside, Sarah moved through the rooms, her hands trailing over countertops and doorframes, touching the solidity as if to convince herself it was real. The crew had dispersed in waves throughout the afternoon, 51 riders melting back into the roads, their Harleys fading into the horizon with exhaust notes that echoed like a farewell roar. But Ethan stayed, drawn by the unfinished edges of the vow that had pulled him here. Marcus pulled up last, his truck rumbling to a stop, gravel crunching under tires worn from endless miles. He stepped out, a folder tucked under his arm, his face etched with the kind of weariness that came from sifting through shadows. "Boss," he said, voice low as he joined Ethan at the rail, "we got more than Hale's Bluff to worry about. That clerk I mentioned, she slipped us copies, emails, ledgers. The whole operation's a house of cards, bribes to the council, forged signatures on those evictions. He's not just after this plot. He's gutting the town for that resort sprawl." Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the road where Hale's sedans had vanished hours earlier. The confrontation had been a spark, not a fire. Hale's retreat bought time, but the developer's reach was long, tentacles wrapping around judges and headlines alike. In the quiet that followed, memories stirred unbidden. Ethan leaned against the post, the wood still warm from the day's labor, and let his mind drift to the mill town's ruins, where he'd scavenged for scraps after the blaze. His father, bandaged and broken in that dim hospital room, had whispered through cracked lips, "Son, honor ain't in the winning, it's in the standing, even when the ground shakes." Those words had been a lifeline through the Corps' brutal cadence, the club's raw initiations, the nights when regret tasted like cheap whiskey. Joining the Iron Vow hadn't erased the scars, it had given them purpose, turning lone wolves into a pack that howled for the forgotten. Now, with Lily's home rising as proof, that purpose felt tangible, a bridge from past ghosts to present light. Sarah emerged from the front door, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression a mix of gratitude and resolve. "I can't thank you enough," she said, stepping closer, the porch light flickering on overhead and casting soft shadows across her face. The club's already talking about a community watch, neighbors pitching in to keep an eye out. But Hale, he won't stop. Her voice trembled slightly, the weight of single motherhood and shattered security pressing in. Ethan met her eyes, seeing echoes of his own mother's quiet strength after the fire, holding the family together with threadbare hope. "He won't touch this place," he assured her, the words oath renewed. "We've got eyes everywhere, old buddies in the State House, riders on patrol. This ain't just a build, it's a line in the sand." Lily hopped off the swing, tugging at Ethan's pant leg, her eyes bright with the innocence that had ignited it all. "Can you stay for dinner, Mr. Ethan? Mommy made pasta, like the kind you said your dad loved." He ruffled her hair, the gesture automatic, a warmth spreading through his chest that chased away the chill of impending storm. "Wouldn't miss it, kiddo." As they moved inside, the house enveloped them in its newness, the scent of lemon cleaner mingling with simmering sauce, lights humming steadily without a flicker. Grace had stopped by earlier, stocking the medicine cabinet with essentials and leaving a quilt she'd pieced from club patches, each square a story of survival. Noah had rigged a security system, simple but ironclad, cameras linked to the outpost's monitors. Tyler lingered longest, etching protective runes into the threshold, a superstitious nod to the crosses he'd carved in war zones. Dinner unfolded around the kitchen table, steam rising from bowls like shared secrets. Laughter bubbled up as Lily recounted her painting adventures, sauce smudging her chin, while Sarah and Ethan traded quiet tales of resilience, her long shifts at the diner, his desert patrols where brotherhood meant everything. Marcus joined, unfolding the folder across the scarred wood, maps highlighting Hale's targeted lots. Farms, homes, the heart of Willow Creek. "We expose him," Marcus said, tracing a route with his finger. "News crews already sniffing. One leak, and it snowballs." Ethan chewed thoughtfully, the pasta grounding him, a simple meal echoing the feasts after long rides. The promise to his father intertwined here, with Sarah's determination, Lily's trust, the club's invisible net. Redemption wasn't a solitary ride, it was this, woven into the lives they touched. But as plates cleared, the night pressed in with urgency. A low rumble built outside, not thunder but engines, a scout from the club, pulling up with urgent news. "Hale's moving fast," the rider panted, helmet still in hand. "Got a crew heading this way at first light, bulldozers the works, thinks the injunction's ironclad." Ethan's chair scraped back, the room tensing like a bowstring. He glanced at Lily, now dozing in Sarah's lap, and felt the vow solidify. "Round up the pack. We're not tearing down what we built." Marcus nodded, phone already buzzing with calls, the network igniting like a chain of flares. Outside, under a sky pricked with stars, Ethan mounted his bike, the familiar weight a comfort. The home glowed behind him, windows like eyes watching their stand. Hale's greed was a storm, but the iron vow was the unyielding ground beneath it. 51 strong, bound by promises that outlasted flames. As he revved the engine, the roar cut the night, a call to arms not for destruction, but for the justice that mended what was broken. The road ahead twisted toward confrontation, but with loyalty as his compass, Ethan rode into the dark. The little girl's cry now, a battle hymn echoing in his soul. The weekend had built walls, now they'd defend the heart within. The first blush of dawn painted the sky over Willow Creek, in strokes of rose and gold, the air thick with the promise of a new day laced with the metallic tang of dew on steel. Ethan Harlan led the convoy back to the site, his Harley cutting through the mist like a blade. The low thunder of 51 engines behind him, a symphony of unyielding resolve. The home stood waiting, its fresh facade a testament to hands that built rather than broke, windows reflecting the rising sun like eyes alert to the threat. Sarah and Lily were inside, shadows moving in the warm glow of kitchen lights, unaware yet of the storm gathering at the horizon. Ethan's grip tightened on the handlebars, the leather worn smooth from years of holding fast to oaths that time couldn't erode. They arrived just as Hale's operation rolled in, a phalanx of bulldozers and flatbeds groaning under the weight of demolition gear. Flanked by a half-dozen sedans and the same deputies from before, their faces set in grim lines. Victor Hale stood at the forefront, arms crossed over his tailored vest, a smug curve to his lips as if victory was already etched in the dust. The machines idled, diesel fumes curling like serpents, ready to claw the earth and erase the weekend's labor in a single morning. Ethan killed his engine first, boots hitting the gravel with a deliberate crunch, the crew fanning out behind him in a wall of leather and determination. No weapons drawn, no shouts, just presence solid as the foundation they'd poured. "Morning again, councilman," Ethan called, his voice carrying clear over the rumble, steady as a heartbeat. Hale turned, his expression flickering from triumph to irritation, eyes narrowing at the assembled riders. "Harlan, I warned you. This is over. The injunction's filed, court's on my side. Pack your circus and go." He gestured to the lead operator, who revved the bulldozer's blade, the roar a guttural challenge. But Ethan stepped forward, unhurried, his gaze locking onto Hale's with the weight of unspoken histories. The mill fires, the evictions, the fathers who died fighting shadows like this man. Court? Or your pockets? We've got the emails, the ledgers. Your progress ends here. Murmurs rippled through Hale's crew, the deputies exchanging uneasy glances as Marcus held up a tablet, the screen glowing with scanned documents leaked from the clerk's office. The news van from yesterday crested the hill again, cameras whirring to life, capturing the standoff in high definition. Bikers not as villains but guardians. Their bikes, a barricade of chrome and loyalty. Grace stood beside Sarah, who had emerged with Lily clutched close, the child's wide eyes taking in the tension like a scene from one of her storybooks, turned real. Noah positioned himself near the porch, his prosthetic leg planted firm, while Tyler loomed silently, a human shield etched with quiet faith. Hale's facade cracked, sweat beading on his brow despite the cooling air. "Bluffing won't save you, this land's mine, eminent domain, signed and sealed." But his voice wavered, the bluster hollow against the growing hum of additional engines approaching from the east. Allied chapters, called in overnight, swelling the ranks to near 100. A state trooper's cruiser pulled up unbidden, lights flashing neutral. The officer, a vet from Ethan's old unit, stepping out with a nod. "Got a call about irregularities, Hale. Mind if I take a look at those papers?" The developer's face paled, the folder he thrust forward trembling slightly in his grasp. As the trooper pored over the documents, the morning light strengthened, illuminating the flaws. Forged timestamps, mismatched signatures, a trail of corruption that unraveled like cheap thread. Hale's men shifted, the bulldozer operator killing his engine with a defeated whine, deputies retreating to their cars as radios crackled with higher commands. The news crew broadcast live, the story breaking across local feeds. Bikers expose town developers' scheme, turning the tide from whispers to a roar. Ethan watched Hale deflate, the man's empire crumbling not under fists, but facts and the unshakable stand of those who'd chosen family over fortune. By mid-morning, the machines reversed course, rumbling away in a cloud of dust that settled like judgment. Hale lingered last, his suit rumpled, eyes darting as if seeking an escape that wasn't there. "This isn't the end," he spat, but the words rang empty, a cornered fox's snarl. Ethan met his stare, voice low and final. "It is for you. Walk away clean, or the full weight comes down." The developer turned, slinking to his sedan without another word, the vehicle peeling out toward a horizon that no longer favored him. The sight exhaled, tension bleeding into relief as the crew dismounted fully, tools emerging once more, not for destruction, but celebration. Sarah hugged Ethan fiercely, tears tracing clean paths down her cheeks, Lily wrapping around his leg with a squeal. "You made the bad men go. The house is safe." He knelt, lifting her high, her laughter a balm against the scars of old promises kept. Marcus clapped shoulders. Noah shared a grin that crinkled his eyes. Grace, tending to a scraped knee on a young rider with maternal ease. Tyler etched one final mark on the doorframe, a simple vow in wood, binding the space to the brotherhood that defended it. As the sun climbed, they finished the last touches. A garden bed planted with wildflowers from Grace's kit, a welcome mat woven by club hands, the swing tested with Lily's gleeful spins. The home wasn't just rebuilt, it was fortified. A symbol woven into Willow Creek's fabric, neighbors emerging from hiding to offer thanks and tools for a community fence. Ethan stepped back, the structure whole under the clear sky, its lines echoing the strength he'd found in his father's dying words. Redemption had come not in thunderous rides, but in the quiet honor of standing for the vulnerable, turning a child's cry into a chorus of justice. Twilight returned, softer now, the porch light welcoming as the crew gathered one last time. Stories flowed around a fire pit, tales of lost homes reclaimed, bonds forged in fire and frost. Sarah raised a glass of sweet tea, toasting the iron vow. To family chosen, promises eternal. Ethan nodded, the weight lifting like morning fog, his soul mended in the mending of walls. The road called, but this stop had etched deeper than ink, a legacy of loyalty against corruption, where 51 riders proved that true power lay in the heart's unbreaking stand. Thank you for riding along on this tale of honor and unbreakable bonds. If stories like Ethan's move you, Hit that subscribe button and become part of our family. Let's keep the fire of quiet courage burning together.